Today in McDonaldland News, Mount McDonaldland is experiencing thick volcanic shake activity. So try the new Mount McDonaldland shake when you order the McDonaldland meal with your very own character souvenir kit.
Oh, McDonald's, in McDonaldland, get the McDonaldland meal in McDonaldland.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Boundary Corner Podcast. Curtis Wilson here. My partner, as always,
Ryan Siegler. What's up, fellas? How you doing, buddy?
Oh, man, I am doing good, dude. Taking some time off at the end of this week, so did not work today. Sipping on a little water. No alcohol for me tonight. I don't know why. For some reason, I don't work. I get a miserable headache, and I can't have a little cocktail with my with our podcast today. How about you?
Yeah, usually we're rolling drinks pretty good here. So this week I've been back in class. Started the summer session, so I had Tuesday and then I had tonight. I just wrapped up about 20 minutes ago. So I'm finishing the night with what I call the rich man, poor man. So I've got the 12-ounce bomber of Richmond Lager. Shout out Hardywood. And then I've got the 16-ounce tall boy of Hams. So gonna roll with the bomber first, and then I'll finish it off with the Hams.
Awesome, dude. That sounds like some college stuff right there, right? Go get a nice 6-pack and then finish it off with like a Natty or a Beast to get going for the night.
Oh yeah. It's like I've got just enough money to spoil myself a little bit here. What am I gonna do? Oh, well, this nice little spec bottle of Guinness is on sale, and I can couple that with some 12-pack of Natty. Let's let that ride for tonight.
Let's go, dude. Hey, man, you've been doing stuff around your house. I was going to try to do some stuff this week here, but the rain has essentially killed all plans because I was going to try to seal the deck, and it's just raining and raining.
A little too saturated for that.
I mean, like, when I took these days off a couple weeks ago, like, my thought was, oh, this will be good. I could get the deck sealant, wife at home. We can work around her schedule. I can get it done. But nope, that ain't happening this weekend. So I don't know when that's going to happen. Since last time we talked, I've been to actually a few places like a Living Human Being, Home Depot, Trader Joe's, BJ's, kind of feeling a little more normal. Maybe that's a way to say it, I saw you had some Hurleys. Did you guys had friends over? Did you guys go out somewhere the other night?
Yeah, so we grabbed some wings. We got a couple other apps and things of that nature. So we grabbed that, headed over to a park, kicked it for a little bit. It was the first official day that Virginia was kind of opening back up. So we were in Henrico and kind of threw down some wings on some buffalo cheese tots, and they were pretty solid. And then tonight I had some fajitas from the Patron, and we got Sarah got some nachos, and Wyatt got his quesadilla. So it's been a good run here for us on scooping up some solid food, even though we're still doing the curbside dance so far. How about you?
Well, we had neighbors came up Saturday. We got Hurleys. They made some daiquiris, had some beers in the cul-de-sac. Kids rode around on their, on their trikes and other little toys, and Jack rode his bike around. It is funny you mentioned the quesadilla. Is like that. That's the official kid food if you go to a Mexican establishment, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely the go-to. Like, Wyatt's weird. He won't he doesn't even mess around with like chicken or anything. He just wants straight cheese quesadilla and lets it ride.
Yeah, same with both of the boys. Although wife, when we make them at home like we did here tonight, she slips chicken, steak, beef, whatever we have, and occasionally we get the what's in this? Everything. Eat it.
It's good for you.
It's good for you. You're getting some bones here. All right. Well,
There you go.
well, guys, today on the episode, we're going to dive into something that has been long going between me and Brian, an NCAA draft. But before we tackle that, and literally, I mean tackle that, this was similar to the Rushmore thing.
It was an undertaking, guys. It was an undertaking.
But we got some hokey headlines here. First, the good news. Jaylen Jones, the 6'1", 185 wideout out of Thomas Jefferson here in the RVA, committed last Friday.
You know, it's a little bit more special when those folks from the 804 commit to Virginia Tech. It just hits a little bit different. I was big time excited when I saw that coming out. I was like, oh yeah, because I think he's going to do some special things for us. I think he's got kind of an under the radar talent right now. Reminds me a lot of Cam. So I think we're going to see some good things from him in the future. I don't think he's necessarily a day one contributor, but I think long term he's going to pay some dividends for us.
Oh, absolutely. And that Thomas Jefferson program, and give head coach PJ Adams all the credit in the world. Probably when we first moved here, the same about the same time frame. They were bad, and now they are a respectable program. Something he mentioned, and I can't remember if it was with Mark Davis or Lane Gassadante, but they interviewed him. And he talked about sticking it out at Thomas Jefferson because Adams was not there when he showed up. They were not a good program. Kind of tells you that kid's kind of made out of something different when you hear that. So that makes me extra excited. And then you hear the Cam comparisons. You see the body types. You see some of the catches. I mean, he led basically the Central region, the greater part of the RVA in receptions and yards. So, I really think that's no small feat, man. I mean, you're playing against solid teams here in this region. So I think I'm kind of with you. I don't know if he's a day one contributor, but I think a couple years in, I think he definitely could become definitely a player with what we're running right now.
I agree with that. And like you said, with the sticking it out with TJ, I mean, so many of the city kids that have a lot of talent end up, fudging their zip code, so they end up playing for Hermitage or Highland Springs or Verina instead of one of the city schools. So seeing a kid like him, stick it out, do the right thing, and go out there and shine. I mean, that says a lot about his character and says a lot about his willingness to, not take the easy way there, as it were.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. 10 days ago when me and you talked, Dematrius Davis had decommitted. Just the way it seemed, he needed to check out some other options. Said he was planning on making official visits, and then lo and behold, last weekend.
Minutes after the Jaylen Jones announcement, mind you.
Yeah, minutes.
There was an announcement that he was committing on Sunday at 11. And when everything came down, Curtis, where did he end up?
Auburn.
Let's talk about what happened the day before that, though. There was a Instagram post with a top 3 released. Guess who was not in that top 3?
Auburn.
Guess who was not in the previous top 6 he released right after he decommitted?
Auburn.
So we got a little bait and switch situation going on here where pretty much everyone knew where he was going, it seemed like, between the crystal balls on 247 and all of the board speculation.
Yeah.
And then he tried to pull what seemed like a little bit of an okey doke late to try to, I guess, maybe obfuscate the situation. So it seemed like it came out of the blue.
It didn't.
Nah, because we said it last time. Something changed in the last month leading up to this, and then all of a sudden you get radio silence and you get a decommitment, and now you get a surprise commitment to a school he didn't even list in any of these, top schools that he was focusing on. So, that says to me that something was going on, and for whatever reason, they didn't want eyes on the Auburn program until everything came down, whether it was to bring in an element of surprise or whether it was to hurt us or hurt another team. It's hard to tell what the actual motivation for it was here. That part was ridiculous but redeemable. Now, what wasn't redeemable was some of the comments that were made after the commitment, and I'll let Curtis take those and expand upon them here, because I know he was in his pocket there about them.
Well, it got me, when he said the stuff about, I want to play SEC football, I want to be part of one of the bigger programs. Cool. We, as Virginia Tech fans, me, you, the majority of people we know say, yep, Auburn the last 10 years has been a much better football program.
We will advocate otherwise, but we understand where you're coming from.
Understand where you're coming from. That's cool. But then it was really two things. One was Tech wanted me to come in right away and play. Whoa, wait a second, dude. We have 3 highly rated guys already here.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. So that doesn't seem to bear out, common sense like most of us have. And then, and then he talks about, I'd rather sit behind Bo Nix. And it's just like, wait a second. Bo Nix is essentially in the same realm with the guys that we have. So let's not go that direction. But the one that probably set people off the most was the academic thing. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do 3 minutes worth of research on Google. Also, and know in general that Virginia Tech is a superior academic institution to Auburn. Auburn's 104. Tech's somewhere like 30. So, that really set people off. And some people are trying to say, oh, they just misquoted him. He was talking about the academic support. And it's like, I checked Sam Spiegelman's article a couple times, and he has not retracted it. He has not updated it. So either he completely wrote it in completely misleading terms, or Demetrius said some things that really isn't true, and he has not done his research on Auburn as an institution.
Either he completely used the wrong words to convey his meaning, or he doesn't understand what he's talking about. And, even if there may be a program or two specific to Auburn that might, be relative or better than Tech. But if you're talking about the academic institution as a whole, and specifically the target programs that he had mentioned in the past, there's no competition.
Yeah.
So that raises some eyebrows. It seemed like an unnecessary troll on the way out of the good fortunes of the Hokie fandom there. So it was unnecessary in my opinion. It didn't need to be said.
Nothing.
Everyone understood Auburn is a better football program in terms of what it can do right for him.
Yep.
I think we understand that. That's not saying he couldn't have had a good or better career at Virginia Tech than he could at Auburn, but in terms of walking in day one, they offer things that we can't offer right now.
100%. And I don't think anybody would have had an issue if that's all he said. And it would have been like, good luck to you. Have a good career.
Yeah.
So, but let's not get too deep into that, because you're drinking, and we could go really deep into that.
I've already finished the rich man, man. I'm already on the poor man.
You're already on the poor man, just hammering it, dude, hammering it. Hey, let's have a little fun, man. Some things came up this week, chatting, things on Twitter, and let's go with the top 3 chain sub spots for you, Brian. Let's go 3, 2, 1. Start with your 3, and I'll hit with mine.
All right, 3, Penn Station. Penn Station is the winner in this category because they put pizza sauce on the cheesesteak and they've got fries. And if you like a cold, refreshing beverage in the summertime, they've got a pretty banging homemade lemonade. What about you?
3 for me is Potbelly.
Okay.
Very big fan of Potbelly since they opened pretty local here the last few years. Both good hot and cold subs, have an awesome chip brand. But the one thing that sets it off for me is, dude, that little pickled hot pepper thing they have. It's just like so money. It's like, can I have 2 of those to go on my sub? I appreciate it.
Man, I know about you and the peppers, man. I remember some trips you used to make at the office back in the day. You would always load up on the peppers. So I know that you are a pepper connoisseur.
I like peppers. You know, dude, I'll be straight up. As a family, we buy bell peppers either 3 or 6 every week. So I love peppers. All right, what's your 2?
2, I'm going to go. It's a toss up here. I'm going to go Firehouse. Firehouse. I'm going to go. Probably Hook and Ladder is going to be the go-to. What about you at number 2?
Dude, I'm Firehouse as well, and I think the reason is it's a bigger sub than Potbelly, but they're hot and cold match. They have good, like, I believe their Reuben I've had several times. Excellent Reuben for a chain restaurant. And you know, but they have the cold options too. So yeah. I'm with you on Firehouse.
What's the other one? The Engineer, I think, is the one that has the brisket and the pastrami.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, but just a really good sub. Just, you know, every, like, the ingredients and everything. It's you know, they're my 2. Now, okay. I have a feeling 2 and 1 are going to be the exact same for me and you. Just thinking here. What's 1?
Number 1, Jersey Mike's,
and it's not a question.
Nah, I've got 2 go-tos. I've got the number 9 if I want something cold, and I've got the Big Kahuna if I'm going for something hot.
Agreed on the Big Kahuna, but I love the Can Crow. The Can Crow special, that's my go-to with the cold. But I think Jersey is Mike's. The reason they're 1 is, if you just want like a good cold cut sub, man, they pile it, and they're very simplistic with their ingredients, and it's good. The bread tastes great. They put enough meat and cheese on there where you feel like you're taking a sandwich. And then the same with the Big Kahuna with those jalapenos, baby. Oh, now let's just put it out here to those listening. Subway is not acceptable in a top 3.
Yeah, I've got no problem with you putting Subway somewhere, but it's not a top 3. It really shouldn't be a top 5. But you know, depending on your locality and your exposure, I can see where a Subway might make a top 5. But I mean, if you've been anywhere that has at least 4 sub shops, you should not have Subway in your top 3.
Boom. Makes me think we're going to end up doing an episode of the subs of Richmond one day. Cause
I'd be good with that. All right, buddy. I got a song I want to play for you for where we're moving next.
All right.
Ready?
I'm listening.
All right, guys. We're entering a world where the NCAA has a draft. Picture, if you will. Got to do my best Rod here. Picture, if you will.
Rod Sterling, baby.
So this has been like kind of floated in several podcasts of yesteryear, but we figured, you know, since we're in a quarantine right now, we got time on our hands, we can discuss it. We decided we were going to give the people what they want, and what the people want, I think, is a more equitable college football situation, something with more parity, at least more parity than we have. And Curtis has been, I don't know, Curtis, I'll let you throw it out there. When did you develop this?
All right. It started roughly 7 or 8 years ago when me and you were working together. and we'd take lunches and breaks, and I feel like about every once a month this would come up for like 2 days, and we'd go back and forth. And at that point in time, you knew my stance. I was completely against all the pain of any players. Didn't want it to happen. Didn't think it was right. Now, even at that point in time, even 7-8 years ago, you had a different stance, though.
Yes, I was willing to listen to proposals for players profiting from their name or likeness or abilities, mainly because regardless of how we both felt about the situation, literally every other student athlete has an opportunity except for ones that play some of these major sports. So whether they're on scholarship there or not, they can make money off their likeness, name, or ability. But NCAA athletes didn't have that privilege. So that's where my take was. But it seemed like Curtis, if he was gonna take a dive off here, he wanted something a little bit more revolutionary.
Yeah, there's no reason to play it safe in that case. Because my thought was when you always talked about that was, well, whoever has the biggest boosters are just going to essentially hire the top prospects. If you got a booster who's worth $60 million, you want to come here, son? Come on over. Here's $60,000. Talk about my car dealership, whatever. But as you slowly through those conversations, you sort of kind of grinded at me over those few years because you hit some really good valid points. But then I can remember like one of the days I first brought up the idea, it hit me, and I said it to you. It was like revolutionary idea. And the idea was this. And when I said it, I'm sure Brian's face, your face, it probably gave me one of those ooshka looks. But I said, hey, Brian, we can pay the players. But if we pay the players, they get drafted.
He said it, and my first immediate reaction was, nah, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That wouldn't be feasible. It removes the idea of scholar athlete almost completely, since a prospect wouldn't be able to choose where they would go if they're being drafted. But as Curtis started explaining what he was talking about, there's actually a little bit of a solution to that conundrum. And I'll let Curtis dive in a little bit more here and tell you what that solution is.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. Don't you hold it, because it's got to be layered right, because if we start going all over the place, people will be like, what the bleep did you guys talk about last night? But the one thing Brian during this time had always done, he challenged me on certain aspects of some of my original ideas. He played devil's advocate, even though at times there was no reason to play devil's advocate. With so many of the ideas and points I'd come up with. So we'd be walking around on break, just chit-chatting, like, what about this? And you'd be like, poke, poke, poke. I'd be like, damn you. But I really appreciate it because it made me think more and more about this. And in reality, it really isn't just my piece. It's both of our pieces, because without Brian being that devil's advocate, without essentially playing that person who, I'd come to the idea and say, here it is. What do you think? You poke the holes. I'd go back to the drawing board. It's really both of our dissertation on this type subject.
Yeah, I was good at poking the holes. So, and then I'd send Curtis back in the lab, and he'd come back at me. One solution would fill one hole, and sometimes open another. Sometimes he'd seal it up good at least on one side of the ship. I wouldn't say that what we were about to present here is better than the current system, but I would argue it certainly is no worse and is more equitable. And if that's what we're shooting for, then this, might have some legs in a Twilight Zone. It is also, again, I think probably a complete pipe dream that we have fun with. And we thought we would let you in on some of this brain lab behavior Curtis is showing, trying to fix college sports.
Well, first of all, pipe dream hell. This is going to be the way it goes one day, and we might be in our 60s when it happens, and we will be commissioning it. Somehow I'm going to get – me and you are going to work out getting some we're going to get the what's the rights, man, that when you have the ideas. God.
Intellectual property rights.
There you go, intellectual property rights. Thanks. It wasn't coming there. The intellectual's kind of gone today. but the first thing we had to do was I had to start somewhere and say, well, who's a part of this draft? And, I'm just going to be straight up. I'm sorry, Group of Five schools, Old Dominion, Georgia Southern, and the rest of y'all, and all you long-term non-major independents. Sorry, Liberty. You're not involved in this. So it's really, you're looking at all the Power Five schools along with Notre Dame and BYU. I'm sorry to Army. Yes, you're an independent, long-standing, but we cannot start partnering you with having this potential when Navy, Air Force can't. Plus, I get a feeling the service institutions wouldn't want to be a part of this anyway. There are things they don't even release about some of their players and some of their scholarships. So I'm sure there'll be some part like, nah, we're good. We're on a different level than that. So that's it. We've got 66 teams.
All right. So first thing here, for those down to 66, they will unfortunately be resigned to get the leavings of the Power Five program should they choose not to accept the Power Five draft designations. They also may not be able to support themselves since I'm not certain that the financials will be the same once all these changes are in place. The first hole that I'd like to poke in here is let's talk about television money and the teams that draft not wanting to play teams that don't the same way that Power 5 and G5 schools currently play.
Well, I think first, Brian, you talk about them playing. I think that's still going to happen. There is still going to be money out there for P5 to fake G5 to say, hey, come down first weekend of September. Here's $1 million. They're not going to turn those down. But also the G5 is actually going to have, in a little while here, you're going to hear some benefits that they have that the P5 don't have concerning players. So hold tight for that, man. The P5 aren't privy to certain things that the G5 are. Now, as far as supporting themselves, I even think with the things I'm going to lay out and we're going to discuss here, there's still a market for G5 amongst fans, amongst recruits. I mean, their games are still being watched. I mean, Brian, you take last year, UCF Temple on a Thursday night competing with the NFL still pulled like 1.8 million people on ESPN to watch it. That's not a small number. And then you think about like Maction and the Fun Belt on Tuesday and Wednesdays. They're pulling anywhere from 650, 700, 800,000 people watching. So the markets are still there. We're a football-loving society, and I don't foresee them losing it all. Now, I think what probably will have to happen if this were ever to be implemented, I think they'd have to take a hard look about who they pay versus who just gets a scholarship. But I think this is just going to be it's still the devil, but it's just a different type of devil that we're looking at making college football as a whole more equitable.
Okay. So you're thinking that with the measures that are in place and with some of the cost-saving features coupled with some of the extra media revenue coming in, that they're going to be just fine.
Absolutely. I think they're going to be just fine. Plus, again, we're a football-loving society, and the one thing I'm going to bring up here later is going to be about the money for that G5 over P5, which I think you're going to like a lot. But now, hey, I got 66 team established. We got it, right?
Okay,
well,
we got 66.
66. But like any draft, you can't just throw out big numbers, whatever. So I started doing some research, and I kind of efforted and looked and said, all right, 8 rounds feels right. It's about 528 prospects. That's where I feel that's going to be the size of this draft. There's 8 essential picks for these 66 teams.
Okay, so you got 8 rounds, 66 teams. Obviously, theoretically, 8 picks per team. So I like the number in terms of not being onerously long of a draft and problematic from a logistical standpoint. Got a couple questions for you, though. All right, normally a recruiting cycle has 18 to 26, 25 to 26 scholarships available depending on departing players, transfers, things of that nature. Where are the other players coming from to fill out the rest of the roster? And is there going to still be traditional recruiting for those sub 87, 86 ranked caliber players? Because if we're talking about 528 prospects, we're talking about pretty much all the 5 and 4 star guys and a good number of high 3 stars.
Absolutely. It's theoretically 8 picks, and then, some things can happen that'll be touched on later about the theoretical 8 picks. But for the players who aren't drafted, let me hit them first. They're just going to be going through their normal recruiting process. For them, it's their decision where they want to play. And you are kind of right about that ranking caliber. It's why I looked at 8 rounds, because that's roughly your 5-star, your elite of elite, to your very high 3, borderline 4. But also, 8's a very interesting number of how coaches have to sell kids, because it's not a tiny number like, you've got to sell 3 kids that get drafted. That's not that overly difficult, right? But it's not like, we're going to do 26 rounds. Well, first of all, we'd be here for 3 weeks, and that wouldn't be fun for anyone. But so they still have to kind of sell a kid. And for the kid, you see so many guys get so excited about getting drafted, even if it's in the 6th and 7th rounds. It's kind of a symbol. I'm one of the best. I was chosen by a Power 5 team or one of the major independents to play football for them. So kind of like a badge of honor to say you got drafted in this.
Okay. So it seems like if you're a Power 5 school, scouting and selling their pick is still going to be very important, because if it turns out, whether the recruiting turns sour or more tape reveals that they aren't who you thought you were, you don't exactly have the ability to pivot to like a high 3 or a low 4 star plan B like you would under current recruiting, because all those guys are already going to be on other teams. So you'll have to try to sell an undrafted player that playing for you is better than going to a G5 school at that point. Or you'll have to find someone on the transfer portal. And since we're there, Curtis, what's the transfer portal going to look like under the system?
All right, hold on. Before I hit the transfer, I'm going to agree with you 100% on this. The scouting, how you sell your program, finding culture fits, they're still so important in doing this. But to your point, it kind of starts – this is where we're talking about the equitable. It starts leveling the playing field. That if a team doesn't have 3 tier 1 options at a positions, your scouts better be right about those lower guys, because that's where so many of the elites, the middle linebacker went down. What does that matter? They had the 3rd best middle linebacker in their recruiting class the year after he came in. It doesn't hurt them at all compared to a lot of players. It's to me why we look at this and you see that we've had a playoff for 6 years. Only 11 teams have went, Brian. Only 11 teams have went to that. So there's really no parity in it at all. For me, I'm all with the new transfer rules for those players. Now, there are going to be, we'll discuss it when we get to the financial part, there are some financial consequences when kids do choose to make that decision. It's going to be highlighted as we cover the salary portion of the conversation.
Okay. So we've got the inherent benefits and the fact that you've still got to recruit under this system. All right, let's take a look at the draft itself. First, what type of draft are we having? Second, are there trades going to be allowed in this draft? And third, if they are going to be allowed, would it be a pick package or would players be involved? And fourth, what are the ramifications of drafting a player that won't play for your school, both for that player and for the school?
And those are really all good, legitimate questions of how this goes. First of all, this is a completely lottery-style selection. And for the first year you do it, you would drop all 66 teams in, pick them up 1 through 66. How that turns out is after that, you're looking at 33 and 33. So, for example, if you were in the first half of the first 66, the next flick, you're going to be in the back half. And you're going to split it up like that. I hope does that make sense? You'll be rotating every year. You're either going to be at the front half of the 33 or the back half of the 33. And where you are is going to be essentially, completely random. So you cannot tank to get extra balls. You get one ball, only one ball. Now, it's also going to be a snake draft. So think for most of us who play fantasy football, snake draft is how we do it. Again, this is where the selections kind of level out. You pick the highest, 5-star because you had the second pick. Well, now you're having to wait, what is that, close to almost 130 picks later?
100-plus picks, yeah.
To make your second pick. So although those teams who are at the back half one year, they have that potential to get we're going to get maybe a top 60 and then a top 80 guy versus if you're picking up front, we're getting one of the elites. But now again, how we scout this guy is going to be kind of important. So, those things are pretty big on that. Now, there will be no trades allowed.
Okay.
Just none. You can't do it. You can't be saying, well, we're going to do this pick and this pick for this pick. Nope. You're getting 8 players, whether you like it or not. Unless if you draft a player and they do not sign to play for you, they're going to have financial consequences. But I'm going to get to that later. But there are 2 things that can happen if they sign with one of the other 65 schools. First of all, that school will relinquish their pick in the next year's draft for the same round. So let's say your school of choice chooses a quarterback at 18. He doesn't want to play for you. I'm going to this school. Well, if that school chooses to sign him, guess what? You get their 1 pick the next year. Some compensation. So again, how you recruit, that school really wants that guy. He thinks he's worth it. Well, you better hope that the next year he is worth it because you're not going to have one of those elite 66 players to go there. Now, here's kind of the downside of it, but good for the G5 schools. If that kid chooses to go to a G5 school, you're out of luck. So, you still have to recruit the players and you have to know them when you draft them that you draft them, they're going to walk on campus and start playing for you.
Okay. So note to all these teams, if this ever goes down, do not put yourself in a John Elway or Eli Manning type situation because you will get screwed and you might waste a pick. And even if you get a compensatory pick, you're putting yourself one cycle behind on some of these teams because you're essentially throwing away a high caliber player for 1 year.
Exactly.
All right. So lottery draft order with a snake format. So now we've got the players are drafted. Let's talk about financials. That's one of the biggest selling points for the system.
Yeah, it is. Now, you're exactly right with the Eli and John Elway comparison. It's still why you've got to recruit. You've got to get to know these guys. Now, there is some compensation for losing a guy, so it's not a complete waste. But to your point you just made, if you just tried to take a guy and he had no interest in signing, he left, yeah, you got a compensatory, but guess what? Well, now you've got to figure out one of the other guys either in your draft or one of the undrafted guys that you're recruiting. Can you get somebody similar? Or to your point, well, the next year you're going to have an extra pick, but okay, great. That's next year. That doesn't help you. One thing about college is we know every year matters. So, yeah.
You don't want to throw away a selection. I mean, you got some scholarships toward the low end that, you take a risk on guys, but you don't want to be throwing away your 8 top recruits from a cycle and knowing one of them's just not going to be there and give you any production.
Absolutely. All right, so financial piece. Well, here's the big piece. All Division I programs, P5, G5 independents, have the option to pay their players a set amount of $20,000 per year along with their scholarship. Now, this will be at the program's discretion of how many players get paid. Now, the max number of scholarship players is 85. That's going to be the max number of paid players. So it will essentially match that. So if you have 85 guys on scholarship, those are the 85 guys essentially getting paid. So if the program chooses to pay all 85 players at $20,000, it is only a grand total, Brian, of $1.7 million a year. I mean, what do you think of that?
That was my first big question when it came to the financial side is this additional budget to pay players, where is it coming from? I know additional media proceeds would come into play because the more parity that you see in a league, the more people tune in and watch because there's more people that have stakes and stakes that go beyond just whether or not a team wins or loses and whether or not a team, gets them that parlay that they've been looking for, bookies aside. Uh, so when we look at, so we got additional media proceeds that are open up to the university as a result of that from the conference and the NCAA. So that's going to be a portion of it. But I think there would likely still be incentive to pay only players that were drafted versus the entire 85 scholarships under this proposal. But, if you've got the resources, you might be able to pay them all. I think some of it's going to depend on what your boosters can do. I don't know what that's going to look like, but in terms of being able to pump money into a program, is that going to still help those programs in a way?
Well, that's how it's going to be the decision of each university. Everybody's going to have, their bottom lines they look at and, how they decide to divvy up potential future monies and all that. But we talked about it last week with Virginia Tech. The football program had profits last year of $23 million. Dude, $1.7 million ain't even 10% of that. And we're one of those in the 30s. And, there's some programs clearly behind us. So, again, the schools have to determine that. But, again, the big piece is, to your point you just made, your Iowa State. And I know Iowa State's now better under Matt Campbell, but for years they were a doormat. You're getting better players. You're a more competitive team. More people are coming. More people are watching you on TV. So you're probably going to see money come back to the program regardless.
Okay. So more money's coming in. It would be nice for the NCAA to maybe come off of some of their money to help these universities, meet that bottom line and not have to cut sports or rely on these extra donors to, fund the system, the new draft system. But I don't foresee the NCAA necessarily changing their allotments to the conferences. What about you?
Well, I think what you're going to see is the schools potentially are going to see a windfall from a deal covering this draft because we know people watch. You take a look at National Signing Day when it happens, ESPN, FS1, CBS Sports, they're all on top of it. So they're clearly covering it up. So you don't think if you have a draft where they're talking about the best high school players with 66 of the most popular teams, I think there's some help right there, man, to help those salaries.
Yeah, if the NCAA is going to cover it, cut it to the conferences and the schools, that would cover it because I know what networks for the NFL draft, I think paid a total of $40 billion to the NFL to cover the draft last year. So even if the NCAA made 1/40th of that, that would be enough to cover the additional amount to pay all 85 scholarships for every NCAA team that's a part of the draft.
Absolutely, man. Just $1 billion, $1 billion to some programs to help them out. I don't think that will be this. Now, let me kind of slip in there. I think with this, the NCAA would be smart to aim for like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like in January after the national championship game, but before NFL playoff games are kind of in there big for those weekends. Because you're still essentially we're going to eliminate the early signing period, and we're going to go back to the old school. You sign in February, so you're going to have a draft, and then a few weeks later, National Signing Day. So there's that kind of good time frame in there where they can carve out a little 3-day spot where fans like me and you, folks we talk with, our friends of other teams, who's not sitting down to see who your rival or who's getting taken.
It's true, man. I think, talking about that, Pro Bowl weekend is probably a very good weekend to look at because it's a couple weeks ahead of the traditional National Signing Day, but it's on a weekend where you're not competing with the NFL that much, especially if you get it in Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. especially if you're doing something in the daytime on Saturday, I think you're going to be fine there. So I think Pro Bowl week could really turn into something that's about more than just, the guys that were good but aren't playing in the Super Bowl, playing an exhibition.
No, dude, I love that idea, man, because if you really have it, you have so many Pro Bowlers there who could announce their picks for alma maters. And I know earlier, and we brought them up a couple times, you had some questions about the financial side. Well, we finally got here. We're through the draft, when it probably should take place, what type of draft it is, but we are now here.
So we're talking about per athlete now. So we've kind of addressed the big picture financials.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the individual, how it affects an individual student athlete. So you got the idea of paying $20K a year per athlete for up to 85 athletes per team. So since we're still at the draft portion and not after a student has enrolled, what happens financially should a student athlete choose not to enroll at their drafted school?
All right, well, this is the biggest piece of financial for those athletes. If you choose not to play for the school that drafted them, but you choose one of the other 65 schools, that's a keep here, involved with the draft, you forfeit 3 years of salary. You essentially forfeit $60,000 worth of money. That's a lot of money. If you told me, Brian, if me and you were told each other, hey, if you go here, we'll give you $60,000 or we'll give you $20,000 a year to go to school here. Oh, okay, that's cool. But if you go over there, you're going to lose all that. Huh? But remember the one thing I told you about the G5 schools? They had some benefits. Well, if you get drafted and you don't want to go play there, but you go play at the G5 school, your ECUs, your UCFs, you don't lose that salary. So G5 schools probably going to be hiring some recruiters to go after some of those kids.
Okay.
So
we're talking about another situation where, talking to kids are going to be crucial.
Absolutely. It's going to be crucial, again, staying with them. Now, you asked about some transfer stuff earlier, too. I want to hit that real quick. It's going to be similar to transfer. If you transfer with the one-time exception, because I do like that a lot, to one of the other 65 schools, you do lose a year of your salary. Now, if you go to a G5 school, same way, you don't lose anything. Grad transfers, they're done with essentially the school they started with. They don't lose anything when they transfer. They keep that salary. So the bigger piece here is, you get drafted somewhere, you don't like it, but you don't want to lose that much money. I'm going to go here and get my $20K and then transfer where I want to go. Well, the dice rolls, Brian, when you start transferring, because it's like you're going to be behind people already. You're not going to know the chemistry of the team. You're going to have to learn the playbook. Is it worth $20,000 to go somewhere where maybe you think has more clout or maybe you think's a better situation?
Okay, so it makes you think twice about clout chasing or going to these traditional NFL factories just for the sake of doing it versus sticking it out and showing what you can do on the field.
Exactly.
At a non-traditional school or a school that doesn't quite have that same level of clout. So piggybacking on that, so we're talking about G5, still has that option in there. But the biggest critique I have is, we talked about the draft funding and the $60K for the draft eligible schools. Who's funding the $60K should a player choose to go to G5? How many scholar athletes are they expected to be paid if they end up playing for G5? I really like the idea of the player losing out should they choose to go to another school, because it requires the player and the coach to be upfront during the pre-draft process. If you blow smoke up a coach's ass about being willing to play there, or they draft you and then you're in a spot if you change your mind or if you were bullshitting them in jumping ship, now you actually got some real world consequences for those decisions. At the same time, a coach will need to be upfront about a player and how they will be deployed or how soon they will play, because that's still going to be a selling point for the situation. But I'm still concerned if they go through all that and they still decide they want to go G5, how are they getting funded?
All right. Yeah, I'm going to hit the G5 first, and then we'll come back to the other piece about, the recruiting part of it. The G5 is going to have to fund their own salaries just like the other 66. Now, the number of paid prospects, again, we said it with the other guys. It's going to be at the discretion of the school. You don't want 85, you don't have to have 85. This is completely up to you. It's an option out there to offer the player this. So they have to make those decisions. They have to look at their football budget. Some of them, are looking at – some of them are making money where this wouldn't be a problem. Some of them are probably the football program pays for itself. What do we do? There's 10 kids we really like we can get if we pay them, but how do we talk to the other 75? Now, to your other point, you're absolutely right about blowing smoke up people's asses and how you recruit. First of all, I don't think any player that gets drafted in this by a school is going to be one of those, or they just want to get this clout guy. Why are you going to do that if they potentially could leave? If we're drafting you, we feel that you are one of the 8 players that can come in and make an immediate impact, right?
No doubt.
If you're not my thought process.
Having some immediate impact, or at least a starting role by your second year, I think that's going to be problematic if you're taking guys like that.
Absolutely. And it's just one of those things because it's really where it starts leveling the playing field, because now there's ABC options. Now you have to be real because you aren't getting those options. Now the coach has to be you have to coach up those who aren't as talented. If you don't have 11 5-stars, you're getting in this recruiting class and you got 2. Well, how good of a coach are you? That's a thing to think about that so many times. Like, are you really a good coach, or do you just have guys who are made for the NFL and you're just here riding them? So, yeah.
All right, man. Well, the theme of this entire conversation has mostly been me arguing money, whether it's how to fund the draft or how to fund the 20K, whether from a Power 5 or a G5 situation. I haven't really focused a lot on logistics or bylaws, so let's talk logistics and bylaws. What role is the NCAA going to play in governing this system? What rules exist for player image likeness? And are there going to be any changes to the 3-year rule for going pro? I know that's more of an NFL thing than an NCAA thing, but I think some of this is going to be reciprocal. And how is pro defined under these new rules, since players are being compensated directly for their play?
All right. So first of all, the NCAA would have 3 to 5 players of every team randomly audited, of the paid players randomly audited yearly. And by that, I think IRS, man, their financials, their assets, anything they earn or of value. So you want to set this up. So if a booster's starting to pay players and they get caught, how do most mobsters get caught, Brian? They get caught actually doing the crimes? No. We've all seen it. It's usually finances that screw them over. So you know what?
Inability to properly launder their money.
There you go. So in this case, do I foresee it happening? Absolutely. But for me, I think you don't punish the kids that hard. I think you lay off the kids. Again, they're somewhere between the ages of 17 and 22. They're young, kind of unaware of this. To me, you crush the school that lets it happen, and you crush the boosters. And when I say crush the boosters, they don't allow to associate with the school. They can't be anywhere near that campus. They essentially get their pride and joy stripped that they're one of these guys that can walk and talk to all the players and get to know them and get the pictures and the autographs. Take it away from them. You want to see some boosters stop doing shit? That's how you stop them right there. Now,
remove the clout.
Remove the clout. Ding, ding. Now, I would like to see going forward what the NCAA's guidelines are going to be for the name, image, and likeness rule that's coming down. Just to see kind of, are they going to have a cap on that? I'm assuming they will. So again, it would probably slowly fall into that line with the audible players. You take 3 of the 5, you look at what they got on their salary, what they got with the name, image, and likeness, and dive into it that way. And you said it before, the 3-year pro rule it's an NFL rule. That's not an NCAA rule. They aren't professionals. The reason these kids are being compensated is because they are representing their school publicly. Because as you know, and the one thing that stuck with me so long ago that when we started this conversation, most students can get a job working on campus. These guys can't. But what they're doing, how they're working, and putting their bodies on the line, playing a game for, 60, 70, 100,000 people to watch and pay to see them play, and then millions more on TV, that's their job. That's their job.
Best work study ever.
It's like me becoming an RA or working for housing, or you like being a front desk agent. There is no difference, except they make a lot more. They bring in a lot more money than we do. And a lot of work studies don't ask you to put your body on the line like that, man.
It's true. It's true. I mean, I play D3, so I put my body on the line for free. But yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. That definitely playing at a high level like that definitely, comes with some hazard pay, as it were.
There you go.
All right. So you're telling me I get paid $20K a year though, and with my only uncovered mandatory expense being gas money? Yeah, I'd still take that. So now that we've more or less laid out the key points, anything else the audience needs to know about this plan?
Matt, no real other key points because it's kind of laid out here. But a question for you, Brian. You have seen and you've heard this plans for years. I mean, years. It's borderline a decade old now. Let me ask this. Does this plan benefit the players? Does it benefit the players? Is that give me a yes or no?
Yeah, players definitely have some benefit here, no doubt, because, again, they're getting financially compensated for their play directly, not them having to hustle. I mean, even under the more ideal situation that we're looking at coming into play here with image and likeness, they still have to hustle themselves to get those things put in place. This is, okay, well, you're playing for us, you get paid.
There you go. So my other thing is this.
That's a big benefit.
Big benefit for the players.
Yep.
And does this benefit the top 10% of college football or the other 90?
In terms of the ones that are part of the draft, and even indirectly, I could say some of the G5s, definitely benefits the other 90. And I think it puts a greater influence on building relationships and coaching on the field product versus selling miscellaneous off the field products. I think in many ways we'll learn that a good coach will get a kid drafted no matter what university they represent, and I'd like to see that. I mean, the schools that we call NFL factories are called such because so many of the most talented players are going there, and every year they've got a 4 or 5 star guy playing the key positions on that team.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this about the NFL factories. The one big advantage they have over the next tier of schools, and you said it, they're so deep. Top guy goes down, another top guy comes right in to fall into place. And it's tough to tell at a collegiate level if it's the coaching or if that guy was just born to play football. And I tell you, if the system was ever adopted, you imagine a team like Ohio State who is just always loaded, so many talented players. You imagine them, that 5-star left tackle goes down, and then it's the 2-star from down the road who probably isn't ready to play. That's a fact of life for the other 90%. I mean, we see it every year our team being the Hokies, we see it every year happen. And it's the other schools as well that aren't in that essentially upper echelon. And I'm going to tell you another thing. And this could be the trigger if this ever were to happen. I bet you NFL front offices would love this idea because then they would be able to see what kids truly can play and who just might be along for the ride with all the other talented guys around them.
That's true.
Let me pose this question to you, Brian. Based on your knowledge of college football, you watch a lot. You're like me. You'll stay up till 1 a.m. watching the West Coast games. You'll watch some random games on Thursday night, Wednesday nights. But who do you think really would thrive under the system? What are some teams out there that you feel just watching college football all your life that always seemed like, who do you think thrives here?
So the teams that are going to thrive the most are teams that are coached well on the field and the teams that develop talent well. And so teams that have consistently finished ahead of their recruiting average in the final standings every year. So teams that might be recruiting, outside the top 25, even some cases outside the top 40, but still finishing in the top 25, more or less, at least once every, 3 to 5 years. Let's talk about teams like Wisconsin, Iowa, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Texas Christian, Oregon, Stanford, UW, Mississippi State, and Baylor. I think all of those systems would probably have greater success under this system because you'd be looking at what they do from a talent development and from an on-field perspective, and not just whether they can stack their team with 4- and 5-star kids.
Dude, that's such a freaking awesome way to put it. I mean, I'd put Kentucky in there under Mark Stoops. What he's done there is great. Put Utah there with Kyle Whittingham. I mean, never getting those top-tier guys, but always finishing good. So let me flip it around. Who's going to struggle to adapt? This is not trying to be mean, but which coaching staff you look at and say, Jesus Christ, if I go out there, I could make these guys win 9 games without even blinking.
All right, so the first one's going to be the other team that likes to claim the DBU moniker, Ohio State. I think they would struggle because I think they have a way of pumping 5-star talent into that program with their recruiting. And oftentimes you don't see it pay off relative to those recruiting numbers. I think teams like Miami and Texas, we always keep hearing, all right, this is the year for Texas, or this is the year for the U. The U is back, or Texas is back. I think they would struggle even more because you haven't seen progress in their on-field product despite them bringing in top 15, top 20 classes. In the case of Texas, consistently top 10 classes. Penn State would see a drop-off because, again, they've underachieved relative to some of the recruiting numbers they've brought in. I'd argue teams with recruiting bumps of late would probably also struggle. So we're talking about the UNCs and the Marylands of the world that are pumping out, top 5 and top 10 classes so far going into 2021 that, we haven't seen what that on-field product is going to look like yet, but I don't think you won't see the buzz that is being created around their classes. So I think that they would struggle as well. And, UNC and Maryland have consistently not had great on-field products, and now you're starting to see them get recruits, and you're like, okay, what's going on? And they would even fall further south from that under the new system.
Yeah, I'm with you on Ohio State right now. With how much talent they have and how much talent, and you watch this recruiting cycle, how much they're bringing in. I can't tell you if Ryan Day is a great football coach or not, or if he just has a bunch of NFL players on his roster and it doesn't really take that much to get them going. I'll put Tennessee with your Texas and your Miami assessments. They're always getting talented. Even the few years while Pruitt's been here, still getting talent, not producing. I do like Pruitt as a coach. I think he might be the answer there, but we don't know. Now, I am going to disagree with you about Penn State because I do think James Franklin could be okay. He did some really good things at Vandy. He's not afraid to make changes on his staff. He's shown that even in the last few years with getting recruiting classes, it looks like he's trying to bring in better coaching. I think he's fallen under this thing that he has gotten to be a good recruiter and it's becoming easier. And I think he feels he's taking his eye off the ball in the coaching. That's why he fired his offensive coordinator, brought in a guy from Minnesota. Now, UNC and Maryland, they just have great recruiting head coaches. The biggest difference is this. Mac has won games in the past. Mike Locksley's 6-40. He's 6-40 careers as head coach. That's atrocious. If I'm a kid's parent, I would just look and be like, hey, dude, how have you coached almost 50 games and you haven't even won 20 yet?
Yeah.
I mean and they still walk in through the doors. It's like, okay.
you would think you would luck into at least getting, one season where you sneak into a bowl, and he hasn't done that. I mean,
exactly. All right. So there it is, folks.
All right. So Curtis, you laid out the plan. I've done my best to try to poke holes and bring up counterpoints so our listeners can know that I've given due diligence to what you're laying out. As I said at the beginning, it's not perfect. And some of the measures would make for some hard choices by 17 and 18-year-olds because they'd be looking at their choice of university kind of in some ways being stripped from them ultimately. So that would be a big thing for them to have to decide on.
It would be, but also being given $80,000.
Absolutely, yeah. There is an upside to that, but we're still talking about 18-year-old guys, of which not all of them, even the 5- and 4-star guys, are gonna, as the NCAA likes to point out, make a career in something other than football and shit like that. So the point is that you're still talking about that being taken from their hands in some degree. So. But it would present a more balanced product on the field, and it would make recruiting more about the big picture stuff instead of the perception of a program. Big picture meaning on the field product and the relationships that a coach has with the players. Absolutely. And it would go back to that, and I think my biggest takeaway from this and what really kind of brought me to kind of say, okay, well, it's fucking out there, but, let's give it a ride.
It is out there. But it's one of those things, too, that if somebody would show the projections of those P5 conferences, hey, you're going to make a lot more money a year, they'd look at Ohio State and they'd look at Texas and they'd look at some of your other programs and say, sorry, dogs, more money's out there. Why is the NFL king right now? Because of parity. And that's why they have the draft. That's why you can't just walk in and say, yo, I'm the best quarterback in college. I want to come play for your team. You can't do that. All right, so here's the question, fans, that we're going to ask you. We're going to post out on Twitter. What schools benefit the most from this type of draft? Who suffers? We've given our answers here. So we want to hear yours. We want to hear if you think, no, Ryan Day is a great coach. Ohio State would keep on chucking. They'd keep on going to Rose Bowls and making the playoffs. So that's the way we're going to ask you guys to come up with it. Brian,
yeah. Let us know who you think is going to be the biggest benefactor from a draft. I think that's the thing we want to know is like, who do you think is going to benefit the most and who's going to suffer? Because like I said, Curtis said, we laid it out, and I think some of you probably will come up with maybe some different answers than what we came up with. So let's see what you got.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to put the bow on it. That's going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner Project. My name is Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe for your podcast on your favorite source, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We always let our buddy Jason Long play us in, play us out. Catch him on Spotify and Apple Music. Thanks for listening. And as always, let's go.
Hokies!